me. That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Thank you, and welcome to the Conscious-ish show, brought to you tonight by the universe. And I'm Mia Lux, and tonight our show is going to be about the most important relationship you have, the one you can never escape, the relationship with yourself. And my guest tonight is Dr. Andrea Pennington, who is an integrative physician. She's a speaker, a best-selling author, and a leader in the self-love space. And I hope she's going to help me answer the question, is self-love just like a crazy woo-woo new word for narcissism? Or is self-love actually a radical act of defiance in an increasingly validation-driven world? Please like this video. I really struggled with self-love. When I was in my teens and my early 20s, I was in an abusive relationship with myself. Yeah, no, don't worry, my boyfriends were great. They were the ones who were like, you should really stop hitting yourself. But I was so used to self-loathing, I was just like, what are you talking about? I'm just keeping myself in line, keeping myself on track, gotta fill the big black hole in my heart. If I just be pretty enough, successful enough, smart enough, spiritual enough, kind enough, I'll finally be lovable. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. You're like, oh, Mia, would you like us to play on the world's smallest violin for you? Like, oh, pretty skinny white girl from a privileged backdrop. To which I say, fair. Fair. And that's not how self-love works. Why do some of the world's biggest megastars get depressed and even kill themselves? The more external validation you get, the easier it is to rely on it and depend on it and end up a horrible mess inside. There's no other explanation for why supermodels are insecure about their looks. Like, am I pretty? Like, yeah, you're pretty, but it's your job. But, the happiest people I ever met, swear to God, had nothing going for them. Nothing. No, from a very, very early age, they had to be like, wow, screw you, world. I like me. And then they developed into functioning, self-loving adults, whereas how many adored child stars end up on opiates? Yeah, that's what happened to me. Not the opiates. But the more I achieved, the worse my self-loathing got. I went to university when I was 16. I worked really hard. And I remember when I graduated and became a lawyer at 22, I put the suit on. I remember looking in the mirror and feeling like, what an imposter! Oh, really, Mia? You think anyone's gonna believe you're a lawyer? Because you have a suit? Oh, because you have a law degree? Oh, because you passed the bar? You think that makes you a lawyer? Maybe technically, but liar! And I used to sit in meetings with clients and in court, terrified. It's someone's gonna find me out and they're gonna call the imposter police. They're gonna swoop in and be like, but I have a practicing certificate. No, it didn't matter what I achieved or how many nice things people said to me because I couldn't fill the big black hole in my soul with external validation. Trust me, I tried. The thing is, I didn't even know that I didn't like myself until my late 20s. And I was doing this kind of stream of consciousness journaling exercise. It's a terrifying exercise of writing down whatever is in your mind moment to moment. I don't know, I'm writing. With a pen. Pens are cool. Cooler than you bitch. Woo! Having to read back your own mad inner dialogue is spectacularly revealing. Turns out I spoke to myself in the third person, weird, calling myself by my last name like a drill sergeant. Lux! Don't ruin this like you ruin everything. Yes, ma'am. Eckhart Tolle, a spiritual teacher and 10-time winner of World's Most Monotonous Voice Award. He talks a lot about the voice in your head, and he points out that the only difference between the person out in the street ranting and raving to themselves and us is that they're doing it out loud. Yeah, we're just keeping it on the deal. We're just everything's fine. It's fine. And in personal growth circles, we call this the inner critic. Yeah, I feel like inner critic is a very generous word for this voice. No, I feel like inner critic would be something more like review of Mia's behavior at casual social gathering, September 2019. Displayed burgeoning interpersonal confidence, but with undertones of festering insecurity. 3 stars. You know? Yeah, like an inner critic, it's still super annoying, but like I could take feedback from that voice, you know? That's not the voice I had in my head. The voice I had was far less New York Times, opinion piece, and much more just anonymous person posting hateful comments on YouTube. I was trying to get through my day, and I was like, you suck! No one loves you, go home! And until eventually one day, I was like, can I block this person from commenting? Is there a report abuse button for my brain? And the moment you realize that you're in an abusive relationship with yourself, it's like, shit. I can't just leave. I have to figure out a way to fix this. It's like, okay, fine. If one has to learn how to love oneself, how do we do it? What do I do? Do I put on romantic music, gaze at myself in the mirror and be like, I love you over and over again? No, wait, really? Yes, really. I did that 5 minutes a day for 30 days in a row. First thing in the morning before I even got up. And let me tell you, I have done some weird shit in bed, and that still takes the cake. Yeah. But what I did learn in the process was that fixing the relationship with yourself is a lot like fixing any relationship. You have to make amends, rebuild trust, but because you're both the asshole and the assholed, there's a lot of apologizing to yourself. And then once you apologize, the best bit is that you have to find it within yourself to be like, okay, well, I forgive you, me. Yeah, it's hours of fun. Hours of fun. But the biggest thing I did that I changed that helped me was just to change the way I spoke to myself. I fired the army sergeant and I blocked the crazy YouTube lady, and I couldn't quite get to I am inherently worthy of love straight away. It's pretty hardcore. But I took an important first step, which was just to talk to myself as if I was a normal person. So if I made a mistake, instead of being like, this is why you'll never amount to anything, my new voice was like, well, it's a mistake. You're not the best, but you're not the worst. You're an okay person. Yeah, I know that's not very inspiring, I'm an okay person, never gonna make it to a hashtag self-love Instacart. But considering I had spent decades being a total dick to myself, it was really refreshing. And so step by step, and mirror by mirror, and apology and forgiveness by apology and forgiveness, I got to the place I am now where most days, I can look in the mirror and see a friend. And I'm not gonna lie, the self-love exercises are definitely some of the most awkward things I've ever done, but they have the biggest payoff. But you don't have to believe me. Let's see what the world has to say with Behind a Desk. Welcome to Behind a Desk, where everything I say has 20% more credibility because, I'm gonna have a desk. Self-love has officially gone from too weird to too trendy. In the last 20 years, over 1,300 academic articles have been written about the effects of not being a total dick to yourself. And they consistently link self-love to better psychological well-being, improved life satisfaction, even a decrease in anxiety and depression. Turns out, Justin Bieber was right. You really should go and love yourself. But more important than science, hashtag self-love has been spreading like a life-affirming rash across social media, with tens of millions of people sharing the hashtag on, mostly photos of themselves in fitness gear. That's fine. This sudden uptake in I am enoughness is actually causing serious productivity concerns. Because if we all just suddenly radically and unconditionally accept ourselves, who's gonna do any work? Like, I don't know about you guys, but like the only way I got through college was with my crippling fear of failure. But research shows that despite the common fear that learning how to love oneself leads to losing one's edge, because there's nothing like a bit of rampant self-loathing to get an edge. But actually, self-love increases motivation. It helps to lessen the paralyzing perfectionism and fears of failure, so people are more willing to learn and change and try again. It's pretty much like reverse psychology 101. Like the moment we say to ourselves, I accept you exactly as you are, never change. We're just like, really? All right, let's change. There's so many ways to love yourself now, but the hottest trend right now is sologamy, otherwise known as self-marriage. And people are spending thousands of dollars on ceremonies and dresses and guests, like the whole shebang. There are even online preparation courses and special officiants and event planners. But don't judge before you are like, okay, who are these crazy cat people? A lot of these people are like married to actual human beings. And the idea behind the ritual is by having like a public declaration, you make the promise more important. You make it more lasting, the commitment to treat yourself well. I respect that. But still, it's like, those are some weird vows, right? You're like, do you take me to be our unlawful but emotionally significant self? On the less extreme end of self-love, the self-love movement has given birth to this very popular notion of self-care. And according to the Pew Research Center, millennials now spend twice as much as baby boomers on self-care essentials like workout, healthy diet, life coaching, therapy, and according to one really snarky writer, wasting their time at farmers markets and buying candles. Like, ugh, millennials and their candles, am I right? Actually, I crack up because I'm like, there's some old people who get upset by this. They're like, those soft millennials. How dare they take an interest in their own basic mental health and well-being needs? It's like, well, baby boomers, with the country you built us, we don't have much choice. If you're gonna take away our healthcare and education, like, let us keep our avocado toast. But there is actually a genuine debate about whether self-care has kind of gone a little dark side, being co-opted by companies, and it's ballooned into a $10 billion industry. It's like a lot of green juice. So is self-care really self-care anymore, or has it become just more stuff to buy to fill the hole in our souls? It's like kale and Palo Santo are the only way to take the pain away. I don't know. Regardless, I feel like simply the existence of the self-love, self-care movements reveals the dysfunction in our normal society. Like that it's weird to want to be nice to yourself, and that it's indulgent to take an interest in your own well-being. Especially considering the American crisis in mental health, I think there's something a little off with our society. And think about it. Just this fact that we see almost 5,000 advertisements a day. Think about it. What's an ad? An ad is pretty much just like, you suck, buy this. We live in immersion negging. Like, I can't even go to the mall anymore without having like a crisis of self-confidence. I'm like, I don't know, should I get eyelash extensions? And if it wasn't bad enough that we've just got used to comparing ourselves to highly photoshopped images of already beautiful people, now we can't even live up to our own heavily filtered selfies. I mean, for God's sakes, there's an app called Facetune. So you can tune your face, you can make your eyes bigger, your nose smaller, your waist slimmer. It's pretty much the app that's like, let me remind you about everything you hate about you. I feel like, this culture, I feel like sometimes it's just designed to make us feel worthless. Easier to sell stuff to people with low self-esteem. So in that context, do I think self-love is some airy-fairy thing? No. I think it might just be a radical act of defiance and even of survival. And so let's learn about it. What is self-love and how do we even begin? Like, I don't really know. Let's ask an expert. My guest tonight is Dr. Andrea Pennington, who is an integrative medicine physician, acupuncturist, best-selling author, speaker, and a leader in the self-love space. Now, she's nationally known for her work in meditation and mindfulness, and she's kind of been on all the big shows, you know, Oprah, Dr. R's CNN, The Today Show, The Consciousness Show. And her latest book, The Real Self-Love Handbook, is a 5-step process to cultivating this self-love. So please welcome Dr. Andrea Pennington. Thank you so much for being here. And you look lovely. You are, I think if I had my head, the image of someone who I could imagine loving. Like, I could love myself if I looked like this. This is a... But I know self-love doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just start with, why are we so mean to ourselves? Like, are we just born that way? Like, why?
No, we're not born that way. In fact, you know, it's not like we come with this factory installed meanie that's hating on us all the time. Basically, if you really think about it, unless there was some sort of traumatic pregnancy, babies are typically born in this universal bath of unconditional love and acceptance. You know, we've just come from the womb and the experience of oneness, where every single one of our needs was instantaneously met. I mean, we weren't even hungry. We just like sucked the nutrients out of mama. And if you think about it, we had a nearly perfect room temperature, right? And again, unless mom was dealing with some stress or some turbulence, we had her soothing voice and even her heartbeat to keep us calm. So when we're born, the typical baby is actually expecting and accepting this unconditional love and appreciation and affection to just keep coming. So
our parents screw us up outside of the room, is what you're saying.
It's not just parents. So, you know, we're going to give the parents in the room a break here, okay? Myself included, thank you very much. But no, if you think about it, from that first year of life, as the baby starts to recognize that you and mommy are not one unit, and we got needs that need to be met, that's when the development of the ego comes on. And the ego is just a psychological construct. It's there for our survival. It's there to protect us. And so the way that looks is, let's say you had an emotionally absent or distant parent, or an abusive parent, or maybe that snarky, jealous older sibling, or maybe you had like a really harsh, judgmental coach or teacher at school, not like you, of course, when you were teaching. Or maybe it was, you know, just that mean bully on the playground. Well, your ego takes all of those little commentaries and all of that judgment and starts to internalize it. And it literally gets installed in our subconscious.
Is that why, like, when I joke about the voice in my head sounds like a drill sergeant, or it sounds like, I was like, this doesn't even sound like me. Like, I would never even say these things.
That's right. It's like an amalgamation of all of these experiences.
Like greatest hits of why I suck. Okay, awesome.
Exactly. So it's the ego that creates within our subconscious mind this inner critic or inner meanie. But we're not born that way. We come from this unconditional self-acceptance, and it's through this programming and socialization process that we take on this self-criticism. And so, you know, there are many ways that that plays out. So for example, if you had maybe a parent that said, little girls don't do that, nice girls don't do that, or what I heard, children ought to be seen, not heard. Or maybe you heard someone say, you are just like your father, with this disapproving look and tone. So we start to internalize those messages, and because the ego is only focused on our survival, it starts to look within the environment for threats to our survival. Because of course, if you think about it, our ancestors were, you know, tribal, right? Like, we are human beings, but that is a combination of human spirit and human animal. We're pack animals. So we need the tribe to survive. And so, of course, the ego is like, okay, are there any threats to me being kicked out of the tribe? And so we internalize all of those messages, and unfortunately, some of us, like you and like me, really build up this inner meanie that starts to just launch these.
So it's like a self-regulation. Like, you're noticing the bad feedback, you don't want to get kicked out of the tribe, so you absorb the bad feedback, you change your behavior as a kind of way of fitting in or complying for survival.
Absolutely, that's it.
Gotcha.
But unfortunately, it can backfire because, and you know, let's think about this. Sometimes people are born into really abusive situations, and downplaying certain aspects of yourself can be a protective mechanism. But the challenge is when those last into adulthood and they're starting to hold us back.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about how dysfunctional sort of inner voice narratives, how do they affect us as we get older? Like, what are the symptoms of not really loving ourselves well? How do we know? Like,
Yeah.
It took me till 26 to realize that I was being mean to myself. It was so normal. So what are like the warning signs?
Yeah, it took me till my mid-30s.
Yeah, quick.
Yeah. Quick study.
Dash that one away, ego. Yeah.
Well, there's symptoms that we've already talked about, right? So if you have this inner dialogue that's consistently and constantly cutting you down, that's a sign. You know, again, for many of us, we start to downplay certain aspects of our personality if we know that it might get us kicked out of the group. So for better or for worse, we might start to disown aspects of our true self.
Like good aspects.
Even the good aspects. And unfortunately, that's not natural. So because we come from an environment from the womb where we're supposed to express ourselves to get our needs met, when we start to squash that and hide that, it creates discomfort. So psychologically, that can look like anxiety or depression. But not expressing your true self can also affect your physiology. Like we know now that dealing with stress and trauma and isolation can impact the immune system, you know, setting us up for future disease. It can increase our likelihood of getting some of the worst diseases of mankind.
Well, like we spoke about, like both of us have had severe burnout multiple times.
Yeah.
And every time I did burnout, a huge part of it was just the insane, mean narrative beating me down until I was just exhausted.
Yeah.
So yeah, it clicks with me.
So all of those sorts of things. So if you know that your body is trying to tell you something, but you've been squashing it down, that may be a sign that you are, you know, hating on a part of you.
Okay, so what's the first step? Like if you're like, okay, I don't think my relationship with myself is the best, how do we start, you know, to even improve? Because I know for like a lot of people say, well, improve the things in your life, improve your self-esteem. But my experience with that is the more you lean on the external conditions, it doesn't really help. So how do we get to the true self-love that you speak about?
Well, I'm glad you bring up that distinction because for me, with the real self-love movement, we're focusing on real self. So yes, we have this outer packaging and our ego is this personality, but it is a construct. So when we talk about the real self, we're leaning on human spirit. So those are the aspects of you that are like what I call your soul print. They're the aspects of your personality, your temperament, your character, your virtues, your values. Things that it doesn't matter if you've made mistakes, they're still part of you. And so if we can start to just go within and say, who am I really? The things that over the course of time, they don't change very much. Yes, we may have a little more gray hair and a little more sagginess, but fundamentally there's a core part of you that is true. And if we start to at least investigate there, that's our first step.
And is that true self, is that like separate from, I'm trying to think back to when I was so like in pain, really, truly, so mean to myself. All the things I thought I were, you know, it was who I was, my job, it was how I looked, it was my family, but it was also some of my virtues, like I am intelligent, or I am a winner, I am competitive. So how do we differentiate some of those things that we identify with from the true self? Like how do we disentangle that mess?
Well, the first thing is just a matter of semantics, but they're critical. Those are qualities.
Qualities.
But if you start to identify with them and consider that that's your identity, that's when you're screwed. Because if you say, oh, I'm an intelligent, or I'm a boss, I'm a CEO, or I'm this person's wife, or whatever, then as soon as those things are gone, what happens to your identity?
Right.
So if we focus on the human spirit, like who are you, regardless of your race, your ethnicity, your body shape or size, even your disease process, and really start to focus on who am I? I am an infinite spiritual being with incredible potential. And yes, you can bring forth those attributes. You know, I'm a compassionate person, I'm a lover, I'm a, you know, whatever.
Yeah, I like that. I think the one I got to, which is like such a basic version of what you just described, was pretty much like, I am a soul doing my best. And sometimes I fail, and sometimes I do well. But no matter what, I'm just here for the experience. Because then I figure, like, if that's my frame of who I am, like, no matter what happens to me, that it's untouchable.
Yep.
And if I can be okay in that frame, I'm okay no matter what.
That's it. That's precisely it.
You work with a lot of different self-love practices, and you've worked with thousands of people on this. What, in your experience, is one of the most powerful tools that people can use to practice self-love?
Well, there's really three, but if we start them off in order, I'm a huge fan of the work that Ellen Langer has done and published. And one of the key things about getting to this state of unconditional self-acceptance is mindfulness. Mindfulness is really all about being present, conscious, and aware in this moment. And so the big distinction there is to look at this moment in context. So yes, in the past, you may have screwed up. In the past, you may have had to fold and mold yourself in order to fit in. But if you keep judging yourself against the past, you end up feeling bad. But if you can come into the present moment and say, in this moment, in this context, am I a loser? Am I always a whatever, whatever? Well, no, because in this present moment, you are here right now. So mindfulness is really the first step. And what the research shows is the more mindful we are, the more that we are present and just aware that everything changes. I'm not always a loser, even though I may have said that a few thousand times. I'm not, because sometimes I do win. So as soon as we can become mindful and present, that's our first step.
Okay, so mindfulness, number one.
The second one is something that you and I are big fans of, and that's compassion, and especially self-compassion. Now, it's hard for us recovering perfectionists because we typically judge everything on a 100% or 0% scale. But self-compassion is not about becoming a wuss. It's really about recognizing our humanity. Like we as humans, like all of us here, we all have our faults and we have our good qualities. We all have a tendency to kind of look at other people and compare how we're doing. We have an inner dialogue that's sometimes negative. We're self-conscious, we're body conscious. And as soon as you can recognize, hey, we're all in this together, we're all doing the same thing, that's your first step to having a little more compassion for yourself. So if you can get into the present moment and say, wow, I am really being hard on myself right now.
Let's put a little compassion on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so mindfulness and then compassion.
Yeah.
What's the third lucky one?
The third is all about living from your true essence.
Sounds scary.
It does. And it is probably the hardest one because we're so used to censoring ourselves. We're so used to downplaying our talents and not speaking up for our truth. But when you can start to live from that true essence, the first time I always encourage patients to just like try it out in some like very normal thing, like when you're going up to the counter to order a latte, and just speak your truth and say, you know what, today I'd actually like that with soy milk, please. Speaking your truth in these little ways and
don't laugh.
and not dying.
No, I'm like, I come from like a polite Protestant background. Like just asking for a different, like if you don't mind and it's not a terrible inconvenience, and only if it's not out the way, and if you don't have to walk over there, could I please have some soy milk? I'll pay you extra. You know, crazy. So I hear you. I mean, for anyone out there who's like, we're from New York, what are you talking about?
Right.
There's a lot of us struggling over here to ask for what we want.
It's true. I mean, and that happens in all areas of life. So the more that you can start to express your true desires, your wants, your wishes, it gets easier. And the first step is recognizing that you didn't die.
Right.
Because the ego is always thinking, oh my God, we're gonna die, we're gonna get kicked out.
They're gonna kick us out of the tribe and we're gonna starve.
Yeah.
That's true. Interesting. Okay, so mindfulness, compassion, and then like living your true essence. All right, so then I'm really curious because whenever I talk about self-love, especially in this world and this climate, I really want to discuss body image because, you know, there's a huge, I mean, just the amount of anxiety and eating disorders and body dysmorphia that's going around is crazy.
Yeah.
You know, with Instagram and selfies and filtering, like it's really pretty hardcore. So what do you say about, you know, how we identify with our bodies and how can we kind of transform that relationship to help with the self-love process?
Yeah, well, the first step is also recognizing that you're not your body.
But I feel like I'm my body.
I know.
Like when somebody hits me, I'm like, ow.
But it's
my body.
But it's like what you said before, these little baby steps.
Yeah.
And it's like we have to remind ourselves, I am not my body. This body is simply a vessel. It's a vehicle for our soul to kind of navigate through this life of ours. And the more that you can reinforce that message, I am not my body, I am not my body, and to look in that mirror and start to appreciate the things that are beautiful. So when other people tell you, oh, I love your smile, or oh, that dress looks amazing on you, or girl, you are working those shoes.
No, you're making me anxious just like saying those compliments out loud.
I know.
I'm a compliment deflector. I'm like, I'm ready. Any compliment you got, I can deflect it.
Yeah, but so what I want you to do then is instead just take a deep breath and nod and don't say anything.
What?
So even before you say thank you, I'm not even asking
Really?
you to say thank you. I'm just saying don't say anything. Because our initial reflex is to be like, oh, this old thing, or oh, but yeah, I gained, oh, but, right? We do all the yeah buts.
Totally.
The yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but. So instead, just...
You like just let it in. Just like let it in.
And then eventually you can get to the point of saying, thank you,
Thank you.
and just stop.
That's actually a really fun practice. Maybe that's something we can all do. The next time someone compliments you, just listen, smile, nod, breathe, wait for a moment, and then say thank you, full stop.
Done.
All right, challenge accepted.
Thank you.
Great.
Good.
Okay, and then in terms of, say, let's not identify with our bodies, we're not our bodies. Going back to what the true self is there anything you can suggest to someone starting out on this journey of what they can identify themselves with instead? Like, I'm not my body, I am a spirit, or I am I don't know if you've any suggestions for that.
For me, this is the conscious-ish show, so I can say my truth.
Yeah, because it's ish.
Ish. Yeah, you are an infinite being. I am a soul, or I am a spirit. I'm a spiritual being, having this experience of life. I am not my body. I am a soul. I am divine. I am from love, and I'm here to give love. That's where I'd say start.
That's perfect. And then, last question for you. For someone who's starting on the journey and going along it, what would you say to them when, they're like, I'm gonna love myself, I'm committed to it, I've got my affirmations on the wall, I am enough, I am enough. And then, one day they collapse and they eat 6 bags of Cheetos and they watch Netflix and crumble into despair, like asking for a friend. What advice would you give to someone who's on the journey and having hiccups on the way? Because that can be super discouraging.
Yeah, it's come into the present, acknowledge what's happened. Wow, I just ate a whole bag of Skittles.
Or nerds.
Or nerds. Just acknowledge it. Like, be present with it. Rather than stuffing it away, rather than labeling it as bad or wrong and judging ourselves, just say, whoa, I just did that. Okay, wow, Dre, what was going on there? Just really tuning into what initiated that behavior. Without the judgment, without the labeling. Like, that's literally the first step, is just getting present and acknowledging it. Because the more that we try to stuff it away, what we see with people who are in that state of self-loathing is it is a dirty little rabbit hole. You start judging yourself, and then you feel bad. And then what do you do when you feel bad? Well, most of my patients are out there either drinking, smoking, sexing it up, relationship hopping, or numbing themselves in some other way. And so the first thing is to just acknowledge it. And then treat yourself with compassion and just say, whoa, I've done it again. And I'm gonna get through this.
Love that. All right, so next time my friend eats 12 Milky Ways and has a bad day, I will remind her to have compassion and to be mindful of it. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Andrea, for being here, for sharing your wisdom with us on self-love and how we can apply that to our lives. Really looking forward to your book and reading it and applying it. And thank you again so much for being here.
It's my pleasure.
Dr.
Thank
Andrea. So at the end of the day, is self-love just like narcissistic self-obsession? Is it a radical act? Is it just being nice to yourself? I think what we've learned tonight is that every single human being on this planet struggles in some way with that inner voice in their head. So like Dr. Andrea said, starting with just mindfulness, being present with what's happening, and then showing compassion to it, no matter how crazy it is. And then eventually taking that step to living and finding your true essence. At the end of the day, the relationship with yourself is the most important one. It's where everything starts, and it's where everything ends. So I hope that it's today or tomorrow, next time you catch yourself in the mirror, you're able to send a little love your own way. We'll see you at the next show. Till then, stay conscious-ish. If you loved the show, then like, subscribe, and share. Drop me a comment and let me know, what has your experience been so far with self-love?
Join Corner where the big boys play.